In this lesson we're going to be learning about irregular present tense verbs. However, before we do that, we're just going to recap some of the basics that you need to know about conjugating verbs. That means changing the verb from its infinitive, for example, tener, through to the different people doing the action. I, you, he, she, it, we, you and they. Okay. Firstly, just to remind you that all verbs in Spanish end either in the letters er, ir or er in the infinitive, meaning to something. Okay, whether they're irregular or not, they will always end in those letters in the infinitive. And what you always do is you remove those letters and you add new ones, depending on who's doing the action. And of course, whether it's an AR verb, ER verb or IR verb changes what letters you add. Having said that, there are always patterns as to what letters you add. Okay, so I'm doing an action always has an O. You doing it, you singular, has an S on the end. He, she or it will be an A or an E. We always has a MOS somewhere, and that is actually true for any single tense. Okay, past, present, future, conditional, any of those has a MOS in it. You plural will have an IS, and again that's for any tense out there. And they doing the action will always end in N, again for any single tense out there. So those are some of the patterns which you will see do cross over even into the ones which are irregular. Now, as you can see on your handout, there are a lot of irregular present tense verbs. However, you do not need to know them all, and at no point do you have to be able to know them off the top of your head. Because when you prepare for your controlled assessment, you have everything there to help you. The sheet, this video, the internet, dictionaries, your textbooks. Of course, when you learn your controlled assessment, you do then have to know them, but hopefully by then they will have sunk in. And there's always a few that you're going to use far more often, such as tener, ser, ir, hacer. Okay? And it's also worth pointing out that you don't ever need to know every single part of the verb. At no point in any of your controlled assessments are you going to say, I have, you have, he or she had, we have, you have, and they have. It's just not going to happen. The chances are it's going to be a lot of I, some he or she maybe when talking about your teachers, some we when maybe talking about what you do with your friends, and maybe they talking about what your friends do or what the teachers do. Okay? If you are aiming for a B or C grade, then you really only need to be using two of the different people, so I and maybe we. Obviously, if you're aiming for the A and A stars, you do need to try and vary the person doing the action in your writing and in your speaking, just to show that you have an awareness of the different parts of the verb. Anyway, let's take a quick look at them then, okay? Remembering you don't need to know these by heart, don't get overwhelmed. I'm here to try and show you easier ways to remember things, okay? The verb tener is one that hopefully you know quite well, certainly tengo being I have. That is the only really irregular part of the verb. After that, it follows the patterns you'd expect of an ER verb in the present tense, with just this tiny little spelling change at the beginning. Okay? But notice, for we do it and you plural do it, it doesn't change. Okay? Just to remind those of you who have perhaps forgotten, okay, the verbs always go I, you singular, he, she or it, we, you plural, and they. Okay, just in case you'd forgotten. So tener, really, only bit that's irregular is tengo. After that, remember a slight spelling change for a few of them. Ser, excuse me, ser is completely irregular. I will give you that one. So you just need to really learn that. But as I mentioned earlier, it does still have those patterns. Can you see how the you has an S on the end, the we has a MOS, the you plural has this is, and then the they does end in an N. So even it does make sense, it is still logical. Estar is only irregular in the first person. After that, it does exactly what you'd expect from an AR verb in the present tense. Poder, a bit like tener, it's just got this slight spelling change. Okay, and again, it doesn't do it for we or you plural. It's only I, you singular, he, she or it, or they. So rather than it being podo, okay, which you'd expect it to be, it's actually puedo, puedes, puede. And hopefully you know this one because it's the one that you use in your classroom phrases. Puedo ir a los servicios, puedo tener papel. Right, moving on then. Preferir, again, is only slightly irregular with a slight spelling change. Hacer, only irregular in the first person. After that, it does exactly what you'd expect of an ER verb. Ir is one of these ones that's just completely weird and random. I'm afraid it's just a case of learning it. But again, we have used it quite a lot, so you should be used to it. Querer is just one of these slight spelling changes. Pensar, again, just another one with slight spelling changes. Empezar, again, just a slight spelling change. Decir is just the first person, it's random, digo. After that, it does have this slight spelling change, again at the beginning as well. Ver, in my opinion, isn't really that irregular. Okay, rather than removing the whole of the ending, if you just remove the R and then add the normal letters, it's regular. Okay, because you add an O, ver, add an ES, bez, sorry. Okay, it does make sense. Probar is just one of these slight spelling changes. Volver is just a slight spelling change. Dar is only the first one that's irregular. Encontrar, just a slight spelling change. Sentir, slight spelling change. Saber, just the first one. Salir, just the first one. Okay, so you can see, if you actually take a look at the whole sheet now, okay, that there's two that are completely random, ser and ir. Okay, quite a few where it's just the first person, so it's estar, you can see here, it's just the first one. Hacer, just the first person. Decir, just the first person. Dar, just the first person. Saber and salir, just the first person. And the rest of them really pretty much fit into the category of having a slight spelling change. Okay, so there's not that much to learn. And do remember, you never have to know them by heart. You can always access this. You don't need to use every one. You don't need to use every single person of every single verb. It's just being aware that they are there. Okay, and perhaps choosing a few key ones that you really need to make sure you know the first person. Okay, I would recommend, for the purposes of this controlled assessment and generally just how often you use them, ser, tener, hacer, and ir are very important. For opinions, pensar, but you'll always be saying pienso, okay, and hopefully you just know that one by now. Okay. Other than that, the rest you're not really going to use that often. Okay, it's more a case of being aware of any time you use a verb in the present tense that some of them are irregular, quite a few, and thus be double checking that they're not on the sheet before you then change them according to the normal rules. Any questions, come and see me or email me. If not, go ahead and do some of the questions now, please, and exercises.